Millennials are the first generation of parents who are not afraid to be emotionally visible to their children. They talk about feelings. They explain their decisions. They take an interest in what their kids watch and play, because they grew up on the internet themselves. According to Pew Research, more than 80% of parents under 40 actively discuss their children's online activity rather than simply restricting it. This is a historic shift. Parents are no longer just authority figures. They've become participants in their children's environment. But emotional openness and digital awareness didn't appear out of nowhere. They are the result of how the millennial generation itself was formed. Millennials are the last generation whose childhood took place before the smartphone era. They played outside without GPS tracking. They got bored and had to invent something to do. They listened to music on CDs and cassettes at a time when rap was transitioning from subculture to mainstream dominance. According to Nielsen, by the late 2000s, hip-hop became the most consumed music genre in the United States, and millennials were the first generation shaped by that cultural shift. They grew up in a world where self-expression was amplified through music, early internet culture, and the first social media platforms. They experienced the transition from a private world to digital public exposure. That creates a dual competence. They know what childhood looks like without algorithms, and they understand how algorithms work. Their parenting is not built on fear of technology. It's built on comparison between two eras. Most millennials became parents later than previous generations. According to Pew Research Center, the average age of first-time mothers in the U.S. rose from 24 in 1970 to nearly 27 by 2020. Among millennials, the share of first births after age 30 is significantly higher than among baby boomers. Why does this matter? Later parenthood is associated with higher education levels and greater intentionality, but also with economic instability. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, millennials entered the workforce during the Great Recession of 2007 to 2009. Starting a career during high unemployment and wage stagnation shapes attitudes towards security, risk, and long-term planning. Add to that the pandemic. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, rates of anxiety symptoms among adults in 2020 to 2021 were more than 3 times higher than in 2019. Many millennials experience lockdowns already as parents. Their parenting began in an era of chronic uncertainty. Research from the American Psychological Association, Stress in America report, shows that millennials report higher stress levels than older generations, particularly regarding financial stability and the future. Here, attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby, becomes relevant. When the world feels unstable, parents intensify emotional involvement to create a secure base. Millennials are more likely to discuss emotions with their children, explain rules, avoid authoritarian punishment. According to Pew 2019, 57% of millennial parents say understanding a child's emotions is more important than strict discipline, a higher percentage than among older generations. This is not simply softness, it's an adaptive strategy in an unstable environment. Diana Baumrind identified 4 parenting styles. Millennials more often align with the authoritative style rather than the authoritarian one. Authoritative means high warmth combined with clear boundaries. Why? Because millennials themselves grew up during a transitional period, strict 80s to 90s parenting followed by the rise of self-esteem culture in the 2000s. They witnessed the limitations of rigid discipline while also absorbing the language of emotional validation. Their parenting style is an attempt at integration. Millennials are the first generation of parents with access to endless parenting information. A 2022 Pew study found that more than 80% of parents under 40 regularly search for parenting advice online. The issue is not access, it's overload. Cognitive load theory by John Sweller suggests that the more options people have, the higher the risk of decision paralysis. The result? Micromanagement, constant self-evaluation, a persistent feeling of, I'm not doing enough. Millennial emotional openness is not merely a personal choice, it represents a generational shift. In the 70s to 90s, parenting in the US and Europe was centered around discipline and functionality. Emotional expression, particularly for men, was often culturally restrained. Millennials grew up during the popularization of emotional intelligence following Daniel Goleman's 1995 publication, the rise of therapy culture, declining stigma around mental health. According to the American Psychological Association, Millennials are significantly more likely than older generations to view therapy positively. The mechanism is clear. Parents who have engaged in personal reflection are better able to recognize and label emotions in their children. Emotion regulation research by James Gross shows that verbalizing emotions reduces their physiological intensity. When a parent says, "You're feeling angry right now," they are teaching regulation. This is not softness, it is cognitive training through language. Research from the Gottman Institute links emotion coaching with stronger social adaptation and fewer behavioral problems in children. Millennials have widely adopted this model. According to Pew Research Center, over 90% of millennials use the internet daily. Digital culture is not their children's world, it is their own socialization environment. Parental mediation research identifies two primary digital parenting styles. 1. Restrictive mediation, limiting or banning content. 2. Active mediation, discussing content. Pew data shows that more than 80% of parents under 40 discuss online activity rather than relying solely on restrictions. Millennials do not simply allow devices, they attempt to integrate digital life into parenting. Millennials are the first generation to document childhood on social media. According to Pew, more than 75% of parents under 40 share photos or information about their children online. Parenting becomes partially public. Social comparison intensifies. APA research links perfectionism with anxiety. When parenting is visible, the pressure to meet an ideal standard increases. The mechanism? Social comparison leads to higher standards, leads to self-criticism, leads to parental anxiety. Millennials raise children in a digital environment while simultaneously raising themselves under digital observation. According to the BLS American Time Use Survey, fathers today spend nearly 3 times as much time with their children as in 1965. Mothers spend about 40% more time than in the 1960s. Millennials have amplified this involvement trend. CDC and Child Trends report a steady decline in support for corporal punishment among parents under 40. Millennials are a major driver of this shift. In summary, the main takeaway is this. The typical millennial parent profile looks like this: highly emotionally engaged, willing to discuss feelings, skeptical of harsh discipline, anxiety-prone, research-oriented, focused on psychological safety. This is not better or worse, it is adaptation to an environment of high uncertainty. If history judges parenting by emotional awareness and involvement, millennials may turn out to be one of the most psychologically intentional generations yet. Millennials, what do you think about your generation's parenting style? Is it better than your parents' approach? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe for more.